Has everyone seen this? My phone buzzed in my hand, the screen lighting up with an email from my sister, Charlotte. The subject line alone made my stomach twist: board decision, foundation dissolution and Q4 management fee. I skimmed the message. The board had voted to liquidate all assets of the Prescott Art Foundation. My curatorial contract was terminated. My residency stipend revoked. A monthly management fee of $10,000 was immediately in effect. Cold panic clawed at me, then the replies at the bottom appeared. My father, Richard, had typed, "A necessary but difficult step. Charlotte, execute." I didn't cry. I didn't scream at my mother. My chest tightened for a heartbeat, and then my mind cleared like glass. "Execute," I whispered under my breath. Margaret, our 74-year-old archivist who had worked with Aunt Eleanor for decades, looked up from the entrance. Her face went pale, sensing the shift. "Lock the main gallery doors," I said calmly. "No one comes in or out without my authorization." She nodded silently and moved. I strode to Eleanor's office, my office now, and locked the door. Sitting behind the heavy mahogany desk, I opened my laptop. Not to reply to emails, but to the asset management system. First, the internal inventory. I activated the curator seal, a dual-code protocol Margaret and I had built years ago. No piece could move, be catalogued for sale, or transferred between rooms without both our approvals. The digital inventory froze. Next, the external collection, the most valuable 60%, stored off-site at Sentinel Fine Art Storage in Delaware. I dialed the secure line. "Sentinel, this is Irene Prescott," I said. "I'm initiating a full asset lockdown. Authorization code Delta 7. A pause. Professional. Precise. Ms. Prescott, full stop freeze confirmed. No access or transport, regardless of board requests. Effective immediately." I hung up. Charlotte thought she was cutting me out. She had just tried to sell $15 million worth of art, and I had just locked her out. Then the calls started. A symphony of panic. My mother, Evelyn. Silenced. "Evelyn, what are you doing?" Charlotte barked. "Unlock the archives. You're making a mess." Her voice had that old irritation she used when I'd spilled milk as a child. My father, Richard, next. Silenced. "This stops now. You're embarrassing the family, Irene. Charlotte and Robert have been planning this for a year. Act professionally." Professionally. The word made me smile quietly. I ignored them all. Sat in Eleanor's office, listening to the voicemails pile up, the quiet finally mine. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe, we post one every week. They weren't angry that I was hurt. They were angry that the ATM wasn't working anymore. Then my phone buzzed. A text. From Charlotte, of course. She never called, calling meant dialogue. Charlotte issued orders. "I don't know what you think you accomplished by contacting Sentinel," the message read. "Our lawyers will override your seal by morning. You're only making this harder on yourself. You have 24 hours to vacate the apartment before the locks are changed." My fingers were steady as I typed back, "The apartment is part of my curatorial contract. The art belongs to the foundation, not you." The 3 dots appeared instantly. She was furious. Good. Then her reply came through, and it was the one that cracked everything open. "You are the foundation we're dissolving. You're not family, Irene. You're just the help. And the help is being fired." The word hung in the air like smoke. Help. All those years of service, of care, of sitting with Aunt Eleanor while the rest of them took vacations, erased by a single word. It wasn't just an insult, it was permission. Moral permission. To stop playing nice. By morning, I was sitting across from David Lang in his quiet, book-lined office. David was 68, Eleanor's attorney for 3 decades. His eyes were kind, weary, and too knowing. "Irene," he said softly, motioning for me to sit. "I've been waiting for this day for 3 years. Eleanor told me it would come." I placed the printed email in front of him, the one about the liquidation and the $10,000 management fee. "They're selling everything," I said. "They've terminated my contract. Can they actually do this?" David adjusted his glasses and read slowly, then sighed. "They can try," he said finally. He turned his monitor toward me. "Your aunt was brilliant, and paranoid. She built this foundation in 2 halves." He pulled up a file. "This first one is the operating board, your family. Richard, Evelyn, Robert, and Charlotte. They control operations, budgets, payroll, hours. And yes, they can technically terminate your employment." My stomach dropped. "So that's it. They win." David smiled faintly and raised a finger. "Not quite. They control operations, Irene. But they confused operations with ownership." He clicked open another document, a scanned, weathered contract. Eleanor established a second entity. The Preservation Trustee. His voice lowered. "The operating board can manage the budget. But the trustee, the Preservation Trustee, has absolute veto power over any sale, transfer, or liquidation of assets. They can't sell a frame without the trustee's written approval." My pulse quickened. "Who's the trustee?" David smiled wider now, turning the monitor and tapping the final page. "You are, Irene. My name. Irene Prescott. Signed and dated 3 years ago." I don't remember signing this," I said. "Oh, you did," David said with a small chuckle. "Page 42, Appendix C of your employment contract." Eleanor hid it there deliberately. She wanted your authority buried in plain sight until they revealed their greed. He leaned back, eyes bright with satisfaction. "They can fire you as curator. But you've been, for 3 years now, the sole preservation trustee. The one with the final say over every piece of art in that collection." I sat there, stunned, the genius of it unfolding in my mind. I wasn't the help. Aunt Eleanor had made me the gatekeeper. David reached for his phone, a quiet smile forming. "I think it's time we let your family know who's really in charge." "Now then," David said, folding his hands, "I think it's time we send your family a formal cease and desist letter. Shall we?" When that letter landed, it hit like a thunderclap. The calls stopped. The angry texts from my father went silent. Even Charlotte, queen of control, had nothing to say. For the first time in weeks, there was quiet, sharp and heavy. But David wasn't smiling. He called me back to his office that afternoon. "The letter will freeze their actions for now," he said, tapping his pen against his desk. "It halts liquidation, but I'm worried about something else." He turned his monitor toward me. "Charlotte's been managing the foundation's operating budget for 3 years. Look here." He highlighted a transaction, a $150,000 wire sent 6 months ago to Fine Art Restoration Services. I frowned. I've never heard of them. I never approved any restoration. "They're an LLC out of Delaware," David said quietly. "Formed last year. No public record, no employees. Irene. I think she's been siphoning money." The drive back to the Prescott Foundation felt endless. A cold dread settled deep in my chest. When I walked in, Margaret was in the archives, carefully cataloging lithographs. "Margaret," I said, steadying my voice, "the Degas sketches Charlotte sent out for cleaning last year, where are they now?" She frowned, lowering her clipboard. Vault 4. She was very insistent about them. Said they needed climate stabilization. We went together. Inside the temperature-controlled vault, 6 framed sketches of dancers and women rested under soft light, Degas and Mary Cassatt, priceless. Margaret pulled on her gloves and lifted one carefully to the inspection table. She turned it under the light, studying it in silence. "Margaret?" I asked. Her brow creased. "The paper," she whispered, almost to herself. "It's wrong. It's too new." She pulled a jeweler's loop from her apron and leaned in close. After a long moment, her hand began to tremble. "Irene," she said, voice shaking, "get the others." We laid all 6 out. She examined each one, her color draining with every inspection. When she finally looked up, her expression was horror itself. "They're not sketches," she said. "Look." She handed me the loop. I brought it close to the paper, no charcoal dust, no textured tooth. Just perfect dots. "It's a print," I whispered. Margaret nodded weakly. "All of them. Museum-grade reproductions. The originals are gone." I gripped the table, my knees weak. The realization hit like a blow. The fake restoration company, the money trail, it wasn't about $150,000. That was just the cover. Charlotte had stolen the originals, replaced them with masterful fakes, and now that liquidation wasn't just greed, it was a smokescreen. She was trying to sell the counterfeit collection before any real appraiser could expose her. She wasn't just ruthless. She was a thief, a calculated, high-level art thief. The echo of slamming doors cut through the silence. Charlotte stormed in, flanked by my father Richard, my mother Evelyn, and Uncle Robert. All of them were clutching David's letter, faces red with fury. "What is this circus, Irene?" Charlotte snapped, her voice bouncing off the gallery walls. "The preservation trustee. Who in the hell do you think you are?" I stood in the center of the room, calm and unflinching. David Lang and Margaret stood beside me. "I'm the person Aunt Eleanor trusted," I said quietly. "The only one she trusted." "You're done," my father shouted, his face blotchy with rage. "We may not be able to sell the art, but we still run this place. The board just voted. You're fired. Now pack your things and get out of my sister's apartment." David's voice cut through the room, cool and precise. "Actually," he said, "you can't fire her. And it's not your apartment." The silence that followed was electric. David slid the thick trust indenture across the polished table. "If you'll look at Clause 14b, he said evenly, the preservation trustee, Ms. Prescott, holds complete veto power over every decision made by the operating board. You can't fire her. You can't change the locks. In fact, you can't do anything without her written consent." The color drained from Charlotte's face. All that arrogance, that cool confidence, gone in an instant. She looked from my father to David, then to me. She finally understood. She'd lost. "But that's not why we're here," I said quietly. I gave a nod to Margaret, who stepped forward carrying a small framed sketch. She placed it gently on the easel. "One of the fakes. It's beautiful, isn't it?" I said, walking closer. "Almost perfect." "I was just wondering, Charlotte, how much did it cost you?" "A small piece of the $150,000 you wired to that fake restoration company." My parents exchanged confused looks. "Embezzlement?" my mother whispered. "Irene, what are you saying?" Charlotte's composure cracked. The executive mask vanished, replaced by raw panic. "Irene," she pleaded, taking a step toward me, "please, this is family. We can fix this. We can talk about it." I met her eyes, those same eyes that had dismissed me for years. You already fixed it, I said. In writing. I turned to David. David? He picked up his phone. Charlotte Prescott, he said, voice firm. We have documented proof of 12 counts of wire fraud and large-scale art theft. He looked up calmly. And as for the authorities? The gallery doors opened softly behind us. 2 detectives in dark suits entered, badges glinting. Boston Police, the taller one said, eyes locking on Charlotte. Miss Charlotte Prescott, you're under arrest. My mother let out a small sob. My father stumbled back and sank onto a bench, his hands shaking. Charlotte didn't move as the detectives cuffed her hands behind her back. They led her past the paintings, past the beauty she had betrayed. The trial was swift. The evidence overwhelming. Most of the stolen originals were recovered from a private vault in Zurich. 2 were gone forever, sold on the black market. My parents, buried under legal debt and public disgrace, sold their home in Boston and left for Florida. Their world collapsed. I, as the sole trustee, took control. I dissolved the corrupt operating board and rebuilt the Eleanor Prescott Foundation from the ground up. I filled it with educators, historians, and community leaders, people who actually loved art. Margaret became head of archives, this time with a real salary and her name on the door. The gallery finally became what Aunt Eleanor had wanted all along, a sanctuary for creativity and truth. A few weeks later, I sat in David's office again. I still don't understand, I said softly. It wasn't just money, was it? He shook his head. No. Charlotte needed you to fail. It's an old story, the golden child and the scapegoat. Her entire identity depended on being the winner. And to win, she needed you to lose. She wasn't stealing just for profit, Irene. She was trying to take what you loved most. I thought about that for a long time. Later that evening, Margaret came to my office holding a small seascape painting, Boston Harbor under gray skies. I found this in Eleanor's private storage, she said gently. She painted it in college. It's not worth anything, but, Margaret turned it over. There's a note on the back. It says, for Irene. I took it in my hands. The brushstrokes were rough, imperfect, but real. I hung it above my desk, where a Degas might once have hung. That night, the gallery was finally still. No more schemes, no more whispered deals, just the quiet hum of lights and the familiar scent of oil paint and old paper. As I walked upstairs to my apartment, my home, I felt, at last, the peace my aunt had built this place to hold.